The silence was complete now. 50 alien warships floated dead in the asteroid field, their hulls torn open and their crews scattered to the vacuum of space. The mighty Velkari fleet that had come to capture one human was nothing but debris and cooling metal. Tejo sat in his stolen fighter, surrounded by the graveyard he had created. His hands were steady on the controls, but inside he felt the weight of what he had done. Thousands of alien soldiers were dead because of his actions. They had been following orders just as he would have done in their place, but he pushed aside the guilt. These beings had come to enslave humanity. They had planned to study him like a laboratory animal before conquering his people. They had made their choice when they decided that humans were just another primitive species to be dominated. The human activated the fighter's long-range communication system and began broadcasting on all frequencies. His message would reach not just the Velkari Empire, but every alien civilization within 100 light-years of this battlefield. "This is Captain Tejo of the Human Defense Corps," he began, his voice calm and clear. "I am speaking to all alien races who might be listening to this transmission. You have just witnessed the destruction of a 50-ship Velkari battle fleet. They came here to capture one human for study, as the first step toward invading our worlds." He paused, letting the implications sink into anyone who might be monitoring alien communication frequencies. "I want to make something very clear to the galaxy. Humanity is not interested in conquest or expansion at the expense of other intelligent species. We prefer trade and diplomacy to warfare. We would rather build than destroy, create rather than conquer." The fighter's sensors detected several ships approaching from the edge of the system. They were moving fast, probably Velkari reinforcements responding to the fleet's distress calls. Tejo had perhaps an hour before they arrived. "But," he continued his broadcast, "if you mistake our preference for peace as a sign of weakness, you will learn the same lesson these ships learned. Humans are not prey. We are predators who choose to be civilized. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us for millions of years, and we not only survived, but thrived." Tejo began, powering up the fighter's hyperspace engines. It was time to go home, but first he had more to say. "We evolved from hunters who brought down creatures 10 times our size using nothing but intelligence and determination. We built civilizations that spanned continents, then reached for the stars themselves. We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed weaker species. The approaching ships were getting closer. The fighter's computer identified them as heavy cruisers, much larger than the vessels he had just destroyed. But Tejo was not worried. He had learned that size and technology meant nothing without the will to use them effectively. "If you come to us in peace, you will find no more loyal friends in the galaxy. We will share our knowledge, our art, our culture. We will help you solve problems and explore the mysteries of the universe together." He thought about his wife Sora and his daughter Hana, waiting for him on Earth. Soon he would be home, holding them in his arms again. The thought gave him strength for what he had to say next. "But if you come to us as conquerors, you will face the full fury of a species that has never learned how to surrender. We will turn your advanced technology against you. We will use your own tactics to defeat you. We will fight with every weapon at our disposal, from the most sophisticated starship to the humblest kitchen utensil." The hyperspace engine was ready. Now, Tejo programmed a course for Earth, but he delayed his departure for a few more seconds. This message was too important to rush. The Velkari Empire sent 50 vessels to capture one human. They lost them all. Let this be a warning to anyone else who might consider us easy prey. We are not the sheep you think we are. We are the wolves who learned to wear sheep's clothing. The approaching Velkari ships were now close enough to detect his fighter. Weapons began firing in his direction, but the shots were wild and desperate. They were too late to save their fleet or capture their prey. "This is the only warning you will receive," Tejo concluded his broadcast. "Choose your next actions carefully. The survival of your civilization may depend on making the right choice." He activated the hyperspace drive, and the fighter vanished in a flash of blue light, leaving the Velkari reinforcements to find only wreckage and the echo of his words. The journey to Earth took 3 days. Tejo used the time to study the alien technology more carefully and to prepare his report for Human Defense Command. The information he had gathered about Velkari capabilities would be invaluable for Earth's defense preparations, but he also used the time to think about what would come next. His message had been broadcast across multiple star systems. Every major alien power would have heard it by now. Some would dismiss it as the boasting of a primitive species. Others would take it as a challenge to their own superiority. And some, hopefully, would see it as an invitation to peaceful contact with a species that preferred friendship to warfare. When the fighter dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, Tejo was amazed to see a fleet of human warships waiting for him. Word of the alien threat had somehow reached home ahead of him. Admiral Chen, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, hailed his fighter. "Captain Tejo, we received your delayed transmission from the Resilience. Are you all right?" Tejo smiled as he saw the familiar blue-green planet growing larger on his screen. "I am fine, Admiral, but we need to talk. The galaxy is about to become a much more dangerous place." As his fighter was guided to a landing bay on the flagship, Tejo composed a personal message to his family. "Sora, Hana, I am coming home. I have kept my promise to protect you and all of humanity, but our real work is just beginning." The landing bay doors closed behind him, and Captain Tejo stepped out of his stolen alien fighter onto human metal. He was home, but he knew this was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, alien civilizations were reading the reports of the destroyed Velkari fleet. Some were making plans for revenge. Others were preparing diplomatic overtures. A few were simply updating their star charts to mark the human worlds as dangerous. Approach with extreme caution. The galaxy had been warned. Humanity was no longer just another primitive species reaching for the stars. They were predators who had learned to walk among civilized beings, but who would remember how to hunt when threatened. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of humanity had begun. Tejo walked through the corridors of the human ship, past crew members who stared at him with awe and respect. They had heard the stories of what he had done. One man against 50 ships. One human who had changed the balance of power in their corner of the galaxy. But Tejo did not feel like a hero. He felt like a soldier who had done his duty, nothing more and nothing less. The real heroes would be the ones who came after him, the diplomats and scientists and explorers who would determine humanity's place in the galactic community. His only regret was that it had come to violence. But sometimes, when faced with bullies and predators, the only language they understood was force. The Velkari had learned that lesson too late. Now it was time to prepare for whatever would come next. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was still young. There would be other challenges, other enemies, other battles to fight. But there would also be friends to make, wonders to discover, and new worlds to explore. The future was unwritten, and humanity would help write it. Captain Tejo smiled as he headed toward the bridge to make his report. The stars were calling, and humanity was ready to answer. Admiral Crixtall made his decision. He would not retreat. The Empire's reputation was at stake, and his own honor demanded that he finish what he had started. "All remaining ships, form a defensive sphere," he ordered. "Maximum sensor coverage. Overlapping fields of fire. The human cannot hide from us forever." But Tejo had no intention of hiding. He had spent the last few hours studying the alien ship's technical specifications through their own computer networks. Their systems were more advanced than human technology, but they had weaknesses. The alien energy shields operated on specific frequencies. Their weapons had predictable firing cycles. Most importantly, their computer networks were designed for ships working together, not for defending against an enemy who had access to their own communication codes. 22 alien ships formed a perfect sphere in the center of the asteroid field. They faced outward, weapons ready, sensors scanning for any sign of the human. It was an excellent defensive formation that should have been impossible to break. Tejo smiled as he watched them from his hiding place inside a hollowed-out asteroid. They were thinking like space fighters, but he was thinking like a hacker. Using the alien fighters' computer systems, He began sending false sensor data to the enemy fleet. The information was subtle at first, small discrepancies that would not be noticed immediately. A ship that appeared to be 10 meters to the left of its actual position. A power reading that was slightly higher than normal. Then he began escalating the false data. Ships appeared on sensors that did not exist. Real ships vanished from the displays. Weapon signatures indicated that some vessels were about to fire when they were actually powered down. The alien fleet's computer networks became confused. Automatic systems began sending conflicting reports. Navigation computers disagreed with sensor arrays. Weapon targeting systems locked onto ships that were not there. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "we are getting error messages from multiple systems. Something is interfering with our networks." Krikstal felt a chill run through his body. The human has infected our computers. It was worse than an infection. Tejo had turned their advanced technology into a weapon against them. The more sophisticated their systems were, the more vulnerable they became to his electronic attacks. The human began his final assault not with missiles or energy beams, but with mathematics. He sent a simple equation to every ship in the fleet simultaneously. The equation was designed to overwhelm their computer processors by forcing them to calculate an impossible result. 17 of the 22 ships suffered immediate system failures as their computers crashed. Their weapons went offline, their shields flickered and died, and their engines stopped responding to commands. In the chaos that followed, Tejo struck with physical weapons. He emerged from his asteroid hiding place at full speed, weapons blazing. The disabled alien ships could not return fire or maneuver to avoid his attacks. 5 ships were destroyed in the first 30 seconds of his assault. Their hulls split open like flowers, spilling atmosphere and debris into space. The remaining vessels with working computers tried to retreat, but their formation had already collapsed. Commander Vextar, whose ship had escaped the computer attack due to an older operating system, tried to organize a counterattack. But coordinating multiple ships without functioning communication networks was nearly impossible. "All units, fall back to grid 77 Alpha," he broadcast on an emergency frequency, but Tejo was monitoring their communications. He sent his own orders using Vextar's voice patterns and communication codes. "Belay that order. All ships converge on the flagship for immediate support." Half the surviving ships obeyed the false order, flying directly toward Admiral Krikstal's position. The other half followed Vextar's original command and retreated in the opposite direction. The alien fleet was now split into 2 groups moving away from each other. Tejo positioned himself between them, preventing either group from helping the other. He attacked the smaller group first. Commander Vextar fought bravely, but his 3 ships were outnumbered by the humans' tactics. Tejo used the asteroids as shields, appearing from unexpected angles and vanishing before they could target him effectively. One by one, Vextar's ships fell. The commander's final transmission was a warning to Admiral Krikstal. "The human fights like a demon. He uses our own weapons against us. Beware his tricks." Then Vextar's ship exploded in a brilliant flash, taking the commander and his entire crew with it. Admiral Krikstal was now alone with his flagship and 5 escort vessels. 6 ships remained from the mighty fleet of 50 that had begun the hunt. The admiral looked at his tactical display and saw the human fighter approaching slowly, almost casually. The enemy was no longer hiding or using surprise attacks. He was coming straight at them, confident in his superiority. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel," Krikstal ordered. "Full power to weapons and shields." The 6 alien ships fired everything they had at Tejo's stolen fighter. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around him with deadly light. But the human had one more surprise waiting for them. During his electronic attacks on their computer systems, he had planted a special virus in their targeting computers. The virus waited until the alien ships fired their weapons, then activated. Instead of hitting Tejo's fighter, half of the alien missiles changed course and struck other ships in their own fleet. Energy beams that should have burned through. His shields were redirected to hit nearby asteroids, which exploded and sent chunks of rock flying in all directions. 2 alien ships were destroyed by their own weapons before their crews realized what was happening. A third was crippled when a redirected missile punched through its engine compartment. Admiral Krixtal watched in horror as his fleet destroyed itself. The human had turned their most advanced weapons into tools of suicide. Shut down all automated systems, he screamed at his crew. Switch to manual targeting only. But it was too late. Tejo was already among them, his fighter dancing between their ships like a deadly ballet dancer. His weapons were precise and efficient, targeting critical systems with surgical accuracy. The human no longer needed tricks or traps. He had learned their technology so completely that he could outfight them with their own equipment. Every shot he fired found its mark. Every maneuver put him in the perfect position for his next attack. One by one, the remaining alien ships fell silent and dark. Their hulls drifted lifeless in the asteroid field, joining the debris from dozens of their companion vessels. Finally, only Admiral Krixtal's flagship remained. The proud vessel that had led 50 ships into battle now faced the human alone. Tai Ho opened a communication channel to the alien admiral. Krixtal of the Velkari Empire, he said formally. You have fought with honor, but your mission has failed. I offer you one chance to surrender and return to your people with a message. The admiral felt the weight of absolute defeat pressing down on him like a physical force. In his entire military career, he had never imagined such a complete disaster. What message would you have me carry, human? Krixtal asked quietly. Tell your emperor that humanity is not a species to be conquered. We are a species that conquers. Tell him that if he sends another fleet to our worlds, we will not just defend ourselves. We will follow his ships home and show his people what happens when predators try to hunt the apex predator. Admiral Krixtal looked around his bridge at the faces of his surviving crew. They were good soldiers who had followed his orders without question. They did not deserve to die for his mistakes. I accept your offer, he said finally. We will carry your message to the Empire. But even as he spoke, Krixtal was planning one final attack. His personal honor demanded that he try to kill the human, even if it meant his own death. The admiral's hand moved slowly toward the self-destruct control. Tejo saw the movement on his sensors and sighed sadly. He had hoped the alien leader would choose wisdom over pride. The human's weapons fired one last time, and Admiral Krixtal's flagship joined the graveyard of ships floating in the asteroid field. The alien fleet was down to 29 ships and the survivors were scared. Tejo could hear the fear in their radio communications. The confident hunters had become nervous prey. He had been studying their language for hours now, learning not just the words, but the emotions behind them. The Velkari were proud warriors who valued honor and direct combat. This invisible enemy who struck without warning and disappeared like smoke was their worst nightmare. Tejo decided it was time to add psychological pressure to his physical attacks. He hacked into their main communication frequency and began broadcasting in perfect Velkari. His message was simple but terrifying. Attention, Velkari fleet. This is the human you came to capture. You sent 50 ships to take one man, prisoner. How many ships do you have left? The alien bridge crews fell silent as the human's voice echoed through their ships. How had he learned their language so quickly? How was he able to penetrate their secure communications? I have studied your species, Tejo continued. You are warriors who value honor in battle, but there is no honor in what you planned for. My people, you came as conquerors and slavers. Now you will learn what happens when you threaten humanity. Admiral Krixtal tried to trace the signal, but the human was using their own communication relays against them. The transmission seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You think you are the predators in this hunt? Tejo's voice said calmly. You are wrong. Humans have been predators for millions of years. We hunted creatures much larger and stronger than ourselves. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Some of the alien crew members were looking around nervously. Their sensors showed no sign of the human ship, but his voice filled their bridges like the whisper of death itself. Let me tell you about my species, the human continued. We are the children of a world where everything is poison, where the weather can kill you, where the very air will burn your lungs if you are not careful. We learned to make tools from rocks and sticks. We learned to make fire from nothing. We learned to kill creatures 10 times our size with our intelligence. The broadcast continued for several minutes. Taeho told them about human history, about the ancient warriors who held mountain passes against entire armies, about the soldiers who fought impossible battles and won through sheer determination, about the explorers who sailed into unknown oceans and the astronauts who flew to distant worlds. But he also told them about human kindness, about how humans cared for their sick and protected their children, about art and music and literature. He wanted the aliens to understand that they were not fighting mindless beasts, but a civilized species that would fight to the death to protect what they loved. You wanted to study humanity, Taeho concluded. Here is your first lesson. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We do not stop fighting until either we are dead or our enemies are defeated. Choose your next move carefully. The transmission ended, leaving the alien fleet in stunned silence. Commander Vextar turned to Admiral Krikstal. Sir, the human is trying to demoralize us. We should not listen to his propaganda. But Krikstal could see the effect the broadcast was having on his crews. They were looking at their weapons and armor differently now. These tools that had made them feel invincible suddenly seemed inadequate against an enemy who turned coffee makers into bombs and sewage into chemical weapons. Resume the search, the Admiral ordered. Find him and kill him. Forget the capture order. This human is too dangerous to take alive. But changing orders was easier than changing reality. The alien fleet was spread out across the asteroid field, and every shadow could hide their enemy. Their sensors detected false contacts everywhere. Space debris looked like ships on their screens. Asteroid tumbling end over end created sensor ghosts that appeared and disappeared. Taeho used their paranoia against them. He programmed small chunks of metal from his destroyed ship to emit radio signals that mimicked engine signatures. Soon the aliens were chasing dozens of false targets while he prepared his real attacks. His next strike was perfectly calculated. He had noticed that one group of alien ships always flew in a triangular formation. The lead ship was commanded by an officer who liked to show off his piloting skills with fancy maneuvers. Taeho waited until this group was investigating one of his decoy signals, then he attacked the show-off pilot's ship. But instead of destroying it immediately, he disabled its engines and weapons, leaving it drifting helplessly. The other two ships in the formation rushed to help their commander. This was exactly what Taeho wanted. As they moved to rescue their comrade, they exposed their vulnerable rear sections. The human struck like lightning. 2 quick missile shots destroyed both rescue ships. The show-off pilot was left alone, watching his wingman die while he floated helpless in space. But Taeho was not finished with his lesson. He opened a communication channel to the disabled ship. Captain Zekmore, he said, using the alien officer's name that he had learned from monitoring their communications. You are now my prisoner. I could kill you, but I want you to carry a message back to your fleet. The alien captain was shocked to hear his name spoken by the human. How do you know who I am? I know many things about your fleet, Captain. I know that you have a mate named Velsina and 3 offspring. I know that you graduated 2nd in your class from the Imperial War Academy. I know that you earned your command by destroying a rebel colony on Kethvar Prime. Captain Zekmore felt cold fear creeping through his body. The human seemed to know everything about him. Here is my message, Taeho continued. Tell your admiral that I am not angry with your fleet. You are soldiers following orders. But I am very angry with whoever sent you here. When I am finished with your ships, I will find out who gave the order to attack my species, and I will visit them personally. The communication channel closed, leaving Captain Zekmore alone with his thoughts and his fear. Admiral Krikstal received the message and felt his confidence crumbling. The human was no longer just defending himself. He was threatening the Empire itself. How could one small alien from a primitive world speak with such certainty about attacking the most powerful civilization in the galaxy? The psychological warfare was working perfectly. The alien crews were jumping at shadows and second-guessing every order. Some were even beginning to whisper that maybe they should retreat and let someone else deal with the human problem. But Taiho was not relying only on fear. He was also using the aliens' own honor code against them. The Velkari respected strength and cunning in battle. By demonstrating both, he was earning their grudging admiration even as he destroyed their ships. During his next attack, he could have easily killed the crew of a damaged alien vessel. Instead, he disabled their life support and then transmitted the location of their emergency supplies. He wanted them to survive so they could tell others about the human who fought with honor even against his enemies. This act of mercy had an unexpected effect. Some of the alien crews began to see him not as a monster, but as a worthy opponent. They were still trying to kill him, but now they respected him as a warrior. The shift in their attitudes was subtle, but important. Soldiers who respect their enemy fight differently than soldiers who hate their enemy. They become more cautious, more likely to hesitate at crucial moments. Taiho exploited every moment of hesitation. When alien gunners paused to confirm their targets, he was already moving to a new position. When ship captains waited for orders from their superiors, he was launching his next attack. By the end of the day, the alien fleet was down to 22 ships. But the real damage was not to their vessels. It was to their confidence and their unity. They were no longer a coordinated military force. They were a collection of frightened individuals trying to survive against an enemy who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Admiral Krikstal looked at his tactical display and realized the truth. The human had not just been fighting a battle, he had been fighting a war. And in war, psychology was often more important than weapons. The admiral now faced a terrible choice. He could continue the hunt and risk losing his entire fleet, or he could retreat and face the Emperor's wrath for failing in his mission. Either way, the human had already won the most important victory. He had proven that humanity would not be easily conquered. The stolen alien fighter moved silently through the asteroid field. Taiho had shut down all unnecessary systems to avoid detection. The ship drifted like a dead rock among the floating debris from his destroyed vessel. He spent the first hour learning the alien controls. The writing was strange, but the symbols made sense after a while. Weapons, shields, engines, communications. Every military ship in the galaxy probably had the same basic layout. The fighter was much more advanced than human technology. It had energy shields that could stop most weapons. Its guns could punch holes through thick armor. Best of all, it had a cloaking device that made it nearly invisible to sensors. But Taiho's greatest weapon was not the ship's technology. It was his knowledge of warfare. He had studied every famous battle in human history. Sun Tzu, Alexander the Great, Napoleon, all the way up to the modern space conflicts. He knew that the smaller force could win if it fought smart. The alien fleet was searching for him, but they were doing it wrong. They moved in tight formation, scanning each asteroid systematically. They were treating this like a police search, not a military operation. Admiral Krikstal was frustrated and angry. The human had escaped and his fleet was damaged. Worse, he was starting to look foolish in front of his officers. How could one primitive human cause so much trouble? Expand the search pattern, he ordered. Use deep penetration scanners. The human cannot hide forever. But Taiho was not hiding. He was hunting. He had studied the alien fleet's movements and found their weakness. They always kept their command ships in the center, protected by rings of smaller vessels. It was a good defensive formation, but it had blind spots. The human pilot activated the fighter's cloaking device and moved slowly toward the outer edge of the alien formation. He stayed close to the large asteroids, using their mass to hide his heat signature. His target was a medium-sized alien cruiser that had separated from the main group to investigate a large asteroid. The ship was alone and vulnerable. Taiho armed his weapons and waited. Patience was part of warfare. Strike too early and you miss your chance. Strike too late and the opportunity is gone. The alien cruiser moved closer to the asteroid where Taiho was hiding. Its sensors were focused outward, looking for the human ship among the debris. They never thought to scan the asteroid itself. When Cheor, the cruiser, was directly below him, Taeho dropped from his hiding place like a hunting bird. He fired all weapons at point-blank range, targeting the ship's engine section. The alien shields were strong, but they were designed to stop attacks from a distance. At close range, Taeho's concentrated firepower punched through their defenses. The cruiser's engines exploded in a brilliant flash. Before the other alien ships could react, Taeho was gone, vanishing back into the asteroid field with his cloaking device active. "Report!" Admiral Crixtall shouted as alerts sounded on his bridge. "The Burning Claw has been attacked," came the reply. "Engines destroyed, 20 crew dead." The human appeared from nowhere and vanished again. Crixtall studied the tactical display. The attack had come from above where no ship should have been able to hide. The human was using three-dimensional thinking, something most space battles ignored. "Change formation," the Admiral ordered. "Create overlapping sensor coverage. Watch for cloaked ships." But Taeho was already planning his next attack. He had learned something important from the first strike. The alien shields were weakest at the rear, near the engines. Their weapons were all mounted facing forward. If he could attack from behind, they would be nearly helpless. The human pilot found his next target, a supply ship carrying ammunition and fuel. It was heavily armored but had minimal weapons. More importantly, if he could make it explode, the blast would damage other ships nearby. He waited until 3 alien warships were close to the supply vessel, then attacked. This time he did not use his guns. Instead, he fired a single missile at the supply ship's fuel tanks. The explosion was magnificent. The supply ship became a miniature sun for several seconds. The 3 nearby warships were caught in the blast. 2 were destroyed instantly, and the third was so badly damaged that it had to retreat. 4 alien ships destroyed with 1 missile. Taeho was beginning to understand the mathematics of asymmetric warfare. Admiral Crixtall was now truly worried. In less than 2 hours, the human had destroyed or disabled 12 of his ships. At this rate, the entire fleet would be gone by the end of the day. All ships maintain minimum safe distance from each other, he commanded. No ship operates alone. Move in groups of 3 or more. This was exactly what Taeho wanted. When the enemy changed their tactics because of your actions, you were winning the psychological battle. The humans studied the new alien formation and smiled. By grouping their ships together, they had made his job easier. Now he could use their own coordination against them. Taeho had noticed something during his observations. The alien ships communicated using tight beam transmissions to avoid detection. But these transmissions could be intercepted and modified by someone with the right equipment. The stolen fighter had electronic warfare systems that could hack into enemy communications. Taeho began experimenting with the controls, learning how to send false messages. His first attempt was simple. He sent a distress signal claiming to be one of the alien ships. The message said that the human had been spotted near a large asteroid on the far side of the field. 6 alien ships immediately broke formation and raced toward the false location. While they were out of position, Taeho attacked their former escorts. 2 more ships were destroyed before the aliens realized they had been tricked. Commander Vextar, Admiral Crixtall's second-in-command, was studying the tactical reports. The humans' attacks followed a pattern, but it was not a pattern any military academy had taught. "Admiral," Vextar said carefully, "this human fights like no enemy we have faced before. He uses deception and misdirection more than direct force. Our standard tactics are not effective." "What do you suggest?" Crixtall asked. "We should treat this like hunting a dangerous predator, not like a normal space battle. We need to think like the prey to understand the hunter." But it was too late for that kind of thinking. Taeho had already adapted to their attempts at adaptation. His next attack was his most audacious yet. Using the communication system, he sent new orders to half the alien fleet. The orders appeared to come from Admiral Crixtall himself, directing the ships to take new positions. The confused alien captains obeyed the orders, not realizing they were fake. Soon the fleet was spread out in a long line, with large gaps between groups of ships. Taeho attacked the most isolated group first. 3 alien ships found themselves facing a cloaked fighter that appeared and disappeared like a ghost. The human used hit-and-run tactics, striking their engines and then vanishing before they could respond. When the aliens tried to call for help, Tejo jammed their communications. When they tried to retreat, he blocked their escape routes. One by one, he picked them apart. By the time Admiral Krixtal realized what had happened, he had lost 21 ships. Nearly half his fleet was gone, and the human was still out there somewhere, planning his next move. The Admiral looked at the tactical display and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death in battle, which was honorable, but fear of being completely outmaneuvered by a supposedly primitive enemy. "Sir," Commander Vextar said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawing. We could return with a larger force." "No," Krixtal snarled. "The Emperor gave us clear orders. We capture this human or we do not return at all." But even as he spoke, the Admiral wondered if they would have any ships left to return with. In the asteroid field, Tejo was preparing for the next phase of his plan. The aliens were becoming desperate and predictable. Desperate enemies made mistakes, and Tejo was very good at exploiting mistakes. He thought about his family again, and about Earth. Every alien ship he destroyed was one less threat to humanity. Every hour he delayed them was more time for Earth to prepare its defenses. The human smiled grimly as he powered up his weapons for another attack. The aliens had wanted to study human warfare. He was giving them a practical demonstration they would never forget. The alien soldiers moved through the hole they had cut in the ship's hull. They wore heavy armor and carried energy weapons. Their faces were hidden behind dark helmets, but Tejo could see their glowing eyes through the visors. There were 12 of them in the first boarding party. They moved in formation, checking every corner and doorway. They expected to find the human cowering somewhere, begging for mercy. Instead, they found empty corridors and flickering lights. "Where is the human?" asked the squad leader, speaking in the harsh Velkari language. "Life sensors show he is still aboard," replied another soldier. "He must be hiding deeper in the ship." They did not know that Tejo was watching them through hidden cameras. He was in the engine room, controlling his trap through his tablet. He waited until all 12 aliens were inside his ship. Then he activated the first surprise. The artificial gravity reversed. The alien soldiers suddenly found themselves falling toward the ceiling. They crashed into light fixtures and control panels. Their heavy armor, which protected them in normal conditions, now worked against them. They could not move quickly or easily. While they struggled with the gravity, Tejo triggered his second trap. He had filled the air conditioning system with smoke from the ship's fire suppression chemicals. Thick, white smoke poured into the corridor where the aliens were trapped. "I cannot see," shouted one soldier. "The human is using some kind of gas." "Weapon," yelled another, but it was just smoke from the kitchen fire extinguisher. Tejo had learned that sometimes the simplest tricks were the most effective. The alien squad leader tried to contact their ship, but Tejo had another surprise waiting. He had rigged the ship's communication array to jam their radio frequencies. The boarding party was now cut off from their fleet. Admiral Krixtal watched from his command ship as his boarding party entered the human vessel. Everything seemed normal at first. Then the signals from his soldiers became confused and panicked. "Admiral, we are losing contact with the boarding team," reported his communications officer. "Send another team," Krixtal ordered. The human must be using some kind of jamming device. The second boarding ship approached the Resilience, but Tejo was ready for them too. He had disconnected one of the ship's power conduits and routed it through the hull where they would attach their ship. When the second boarding ship made contact, 50,000 volts of electricity surged through their hull. The alien ship's systems overloaded instantly. Sparks flew from their control panels and their engines died. Inside the Resilience, the first boarding party was still struggling with the reversed gravity and thick smoke. Tejo decided it was time for his next surprise. He had removed several heating elements from the ship's kitchen equipment and hidden them in the walls. Now he activated them all at once. The temperature in the corridor rose rapidly. The aliens' armor was designed for the cold vacuum of space, not for extreme heat. They began to sweat and panic inside their suits. "The ship is on fire," one soldier screamed. "No," said their squad leader, checking his instruments. "It is just heat. The human has turned his ship into an oven. But the psychological effect was what Tejo wanted. The aliens were becoming confused and frightened. They had never faced an enemy who used household appliances as weapons. One alien soldier tried to retreat toward the hull breach, but Tejo triggered another trap. He had rigged the ship's doors with explosive charges made from battery packs. When the door exploded, it created a hole in the ship's hull. Air began rushing out into space, creating a powerful suction. 2 alien soldiers were pulled toward the breach. Their magnetic boots saved them from being sucked into space, but they were pinned against the wall, unable to move. Admiral Krickstahl was getting frustrated. His first boarding party was trapped and his second was disabled. He decided to send 5 more ships to surround the human vessel. "Cut through the hull in multiple locations," he ordered. "We will overwhelm him with numbers." But Tejo was monitoring their communications. He had spent his 3 days of isolation learning their language from their radio chatter. Now he could understand their plans. The captain moved through his ship like a ghost, staying ahead of the alien soldiers. He used maintenance tunnels and service corridors that did not appear on their sensors. While they searched for him in the main areas, he was preparing more surprises. In the medical bay, Tejo found bottles of cleaning alcohol and oxidizing agents. Mixed together with some metal shavings from the machine shop, they made excellent improvised explosives. He placed these bombs throughout the ship and connected them to his tablet. 5 more alien ships attached to his hull. Soldiers began cutting through in different locations. Soon there would be 60 enemy troops inside his small vessel. Tejo smiled grimly. More enemies meant more targets. The new boarding parties entered his ship expecting to find their comrades in control. Instead, they found chaos. The first team was still trapped in the overheated corridor with reversed gravity and thick smoke. The air was filled with alarm sounds and flashing lights. "What happened here?" asked a new squad leader. "The human... He has turned his ship into some kind of weapon," gasped one of the original soldiers. That was when Tejo triggered his biggest surprise yet. He had been saving the best for last. The ship's waste recycling system had been damaged in the hyperspace accident, but it still worked partially. Tejo had spent hours redirecting it through the ventilation system. Now he released 3 days' worth of concentrated waste gases into the ship's atmosphere. The smell was incredible. Even through their armor's air filtration, the aliens could detect the horrible odor. Some of them began vomiting inside their helmets. "This is biological warfare," shouted an alien officer. But it was just sewage. Humans had been using biological waste as a weapon for thousands of years during sieges and battles. Tejo was simply continuing an old tradition. While the aliens struggled with the toxic atmosphere, Tejo made his escape. He had prepared for this moment carefully. In the cargo bay, he had hidden one of the ship's emergency escape pods. It was small and fast, designed for short-range flight. But first, he had one more gift for his uninvited guests. Tejo activated all his improvised bombs at once. The explosions ripped through the ship's internal structure. Bulkheads collapsed, power systems overloaded, and atmosphere vented into space. The resilience began breaking apart. The alien soldiers who were not killed in the explosions found themselves trapped in a dying ship. Some were crushed by falling debris. Others were sucked into space when the hull ruptured. A few managed to escape back to their boarding ships, but they were traumatized and confused. Admiral Krickstahl watched in shock as the human vessel exploded. His instruments showed that 8 of his ships had been destroyed or disabled by the chain reaction. Somehow, a single human in a dying ship had managed to eliminate nearly a quarter of his fleet. But the human was not dead. Sensors detected a small escape pod racing away from the explosion. The pod was using one of his own disabled ships as cover, making it hard to track. "All ships, pursue that escape pod," Krickstahl ordered. "Do not let him get away." Inside the stolen Valkyrie fighter craft, Tejo was studying the alien control systems. The ship was more advanced than anything humans had ever built, but the basic principles were the same. Engines, weapons, life support, navigation. He found the communication system and intercepted the alien fleet's radio chatter. They were angry and confused. They had expected an easy capture mission, but instead they had lost 8 ships to a single human, using improvised weapons. Tejo smiled as he listened to their panic. The hunt was just beginning, but now the roles were reversed. The aliens thought they were the predators, but they were about to learn what it meant to be hunted by a human. He had studied their fleet movements during his days of observation. He knew their formation patterns and their tactical preferences. He had seen their blind spots and weaknesses. Most importantly, he had something they did not expect: the element of surprise. They still thought of humans as primitive and weak. They had no idea what they were really dealing with. The escape pod's engines roared to life as Tejo plotted his course through the asteroid field where his ship had been destroyed. Among the rocks and debris, a small ship could hide and strike. Without warning, the aliens wanted to study humanity. Tejo was about to give them a very thorough education. The stars looked different here. Captain Tejo pressed his face against the cold window of his ship and stared into the empty darkness. He had been lost for 3 days now. His ship, the Resilience, floated dead in space like a broken toy. The hyperspace jump had gone wrong. Very wrong. One moment he was flying near Earth on a normal patrol mission. The next moment, alarms were screaming and sparks were flying from every control panel. Now he was somewhere far from home, and his ship was dying. Tejo walked through the narrow hallways of his vessel. Every step echoed in the silence. The lights flickered on and off. The air felt thick and hard to breathe. His life support system was failing. He had maybe 2 days of air left if he was lucky. He sat down at his communication station and tried to send a message to Earth. Nothing. The long-range radio was broken. The backup system was also dead. He was completely alone in the vastness of space. Tejo thought about his wife Sora and his little daughter Hana. They would be waiting for him to come home. Sora always made his favorite soup when he returned from missions. Hana would run to him with her arms wide open, shouting, "Daddy!" He might never see them again. The captain had been a soldier before he became a starship pilot. He fought in the border wars on Mars. He knew how to survive in bad situations. But this was different. This was worse than any battle he had ever faced. A soft beeping sound came from his sensor station. Tejo looked at the screen and felt his heart stop. Ships were coming, 50 of them moving fast toward his position. They were big ships, much bigger than his small patrol vessel. The ships were not human. Their design was strange and angular, like metal insects. They moved in perfect formation like a pack of wolves hunting prey. Tejo had never seen anything like them before. He ran to his weapons station, but the main guns were offline. The missile tubes were empty. Even if his weapons worked, what could one small ship do against 50 large warships? It would be like fighting a dragon with a stick. The alien fleet was getting closer. Tejo could see them clearly now on his sensors. Each ship was 3 times the size of his vessel. They had massive weapon arrays and thick armor plating. These were ships built for war. Tejo tried to start his engines, but they were dead. The hyperspace malfunction had damaged everything. He could not run, and he could not fight. He was trapped like a mouse in a cage. On the largest alien ship, Admiral Krixtal stood on his command bridge and looked at the floating human vessel. It appeared to be disabled and helpless. The hunt had been easier than expected. "Scan the ship," Krixtal ordered his officers. "How many humans are aboard?" "1 life sign, Admiral," came the reply. "The vessel appears to be a small patrol craft. Minimal weapons and defenses." Krixtal smiled, showing sharp teeth. The Velkari Empire had been watching human expansion for months. Their spies reported that humans were a weak species that had only recently learned to travel between stars. They would be easy to conquer. Emperor Velnath wanted a human prisoner for study. Once they learned human weaknesses, the Empire would invade their worlds and add them to their collection of conquered species. It was always the same pattern. Find a weak civilization, study them, then crush them. "Prepare the boarding ships," Krixtal commanded. "Take the human alive. We need him intact for the scientists." Back on the Resilience, Tejo watched the alien fleet surround him. He was outnumbered 50 to 1. His ship was dying, his weapons were broken, and his engines were dead. Any reasonable person would surrender now, but Taeho was not ready to give up. He thought about his family again. He thought about Earth and all the people who would die if these aliens conquered humanity. He thought about his duty as a soldier and a captain. Taeho had studied military history his whole life. He read about ancient battles where small forces defeated large armies. He knew about guerrilla warfare and asymmetric tactics. Sometimes the weak could beat the strong if they were smart enough. The captain began walking through his ship, looking at every system and every piece of equipment. His mind was working fast, making plans. The aliens thought he was helpless, but they were wrong. His ship might be dying, but it was not dead yet. He went to the engine room and started disconnecting power cables. He rerouted energy from the life support system to other systems. It would give him less air to breathe, but more power to work with. He was trading time for opportunity. In the cargo bay, Taeho found emergency supplies and maintenance equipment. He gathered everything useful: tools, spare parts, chemicals, even the medical supplies. Everything could be a weapon if used correctly. He went to the kitchen and looked at the coffee maker. It had a heating element and a pressure system. With some modifications, it could become a small bomb. He smiled as he began taking it apart. The alien boarding ships were getting closer. Taeho could see them on his external cameras. They moved slowly and carefully, like hunters approaching a wounded animal. They had no idea what they were walking into. Taeho connected his remaining ship systems to his personal tablet. Now he could control everything from one device. He could trigger explosions, open and close doors, and control the artificial gravity from anywhere on the ship. He thought about the stories his grandfather told him about the old wars on Earth. How soldiers would booby-trap buildings before retreating. How they would use the enemy's confidence against them. The aliens expected to find a frightened prisoner. Instead, they would find a trap. The first boarding ship attached to his hull with a metallic thump. Taeho could hear cutting tools working through his ship's outer wall. Soon they would be inside. He activated the ship's internal communication system and began recording a message. If he died here, at least his family would know what happened. At least Earth would be warned. Sora, Hana, he said quietly into the microphone. I love you both more than all the stars in the sky. If you hear this message, it means I will not be coming home. But I want you to know that I fought. I fought for you, for Earth, for everyone. He paused and took a deep breath. The cutting sounds were getting louder. Tell Earth that the aliens are coming. Tell them to be ready. Tell them that humans do not give up, even when the odds are impossible. Tell them that one human held off 50 enemy ships and that we are stronger than they think. Taeho ended the recording and prepared to send it on a delayed transmission. Even if his communication system was mostly broken, he might be able to get the message out during the chaos that was about to begin. The hull breach alarm started sounding. The aliens had cut through. They would be inside his ship in minutes. Taeho picked up his tablet and walked toward the breach point. He was no longer a stranded victim waiting to be rescued. He was a soldier going to war. The odds were terrible, but he had faced bad odds before. The aliens thought they were hunting a helpless human. They were about to learn that humans were never truly helpless. They were about to discover why Earth had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless wars. They wanted to capture one human for study. Taeho was going to teach them more about humanity than they ever wanted to know.